Hello, everyone. Welcome to New World Economics. This is an episode of Geopolitics Today. We're going to be covering the Italian general elections. So I have here with me a good friend of mine, Stefano, who runs the Mazarin Geopolitics channel. He is from Italy, and he is going to be helping us decipher the situation regarding the Italian elections. So to give you a little bit of background here, there was a bit of a government crisis in Italy earlier this year where the Prime Minister, Mario Draghi, lost a member of his coalition and no longer ruled over a majority. I think Stefano can explain this a lot better, but currently, I'm going to give you the current layout of the Italian parliament and government. There are two chambers that are going to be going through elections. One is the Chamber of Deputies, and it's got 400 seats that are up for grabs. The other is the Senate of the Republic with 200 seats. And the biggest players currently, or the biggest holders in terms of seats, is the Lega Party, which is center-right, holds 131 in the Chamber of Deputies and 61 in the Senate. The Five Star Movement has 96 seats in the deputies and 62 Senate seats. The Democratic Party has 106 in the chamber and 43 in the Senate. The Forza Italia, which is another center-right party, has 63 in the chamber, 47 in the Senate. The Civic, 50 and 11. The Action Italia Viva has 46 and 18, and the Brothers of Italy Party has 40 and 21. The final two are much smaller, with the U.S. moderates with 23 and 12, and the Greens and Left Alliance with only 6 and 1. All right, Stefano, what can we expect here in the Italian election?
Okay, let me use a little bit of slides so I can present easily. So let's say that the historical premise, as you say to you, like we are a parliamentary republic, so we elect the parliament and we don't elect the government. This is very important because when you see the history about the Italian governments, you can see a lot of governments. But with the same parliament, for example, the last legislature, we have the same parliaments and we had 4 different governments. So also we don't elect the president of the republic, and this is something that probably could change with the next election. We can see that there was a lot of governments from the 50s, and actually with the last legislature, we got 2 governments of Conte 1, Conte 2. Normally, all the names that you see, it's like the name of the prime minister, and the last one was Draghi. The crisis was made starting from Five Star Movement, but then other 2 parties voted for the crisis. It was like Forza Italia and Lega Nord. So the main thing is like the electoral law, that it's very important in Italy because actually there is a law that it's called Rosatellum by Ettore Rosato, that was like the writer of the law. And it's very important that also in this election there will be a massive reduction of the seats in both chambers. So we will see that the effect of this election could be that one coalition that will get less than 50% of the votes will get 70% of the seats. So it's very important to understand because it's complicated.
So that's very interesting. How many? What is the total reduction of seats? What were they before?
You see here, like you have like from 630 members of House of Representatives, that in Italian it's called Camera dei Deputati, deputy chambers. It's from 630 to 315. So it's half, and the same for the Senate, that from 400 to 200. What does it mean and why it's important, these numbers? Because this reduction was made a little bit for moral issues, but in this case, we already know about the polls that I will show you later, who will be elected in advance, because the seats are half less than the previous election. Also, this is another complicated issue about our electoral law, that it's like the electoral barrier threshold. In Italy, it's complicated because if you are in a coalition, the barrier it's about 10%. If you are single, it's about 3%. Then you will understand, because we will have at least 4 different groups in the next election. Previous situation, we can see that we had let's say a majority that was relative of Five Star Movement. Technically, Five Star Movement was an anti-system party when one was created, but in the last legislature was in any governments. So they changed a lot of the coalition, but Five Star Movement was from the beginning of the last one, 2018, to the end of this legislature.
So this is the makeup of the ruling coalition, correct? This isn't the entire.
Yes.
Okay.
This is like the actual situation before the collapse of the government. So
these are all center right parties, correct?
No, let's say Five Star Movement, you call them like catch-all parties. You have everything inside, so
Okay.
you cannot make the position of this party. Democrats Party, it's like a center-right. It's a merge of 2 parties. One that was Democratici di Sinistra, that was the former Communist Party. Merged with Margherita, that was like the former Christian Democrats. So okay. This is like let's say a center left party. Lega Nord, that was a Nordist federalist party. Now it's more let's say center right nationalist. Forza Italia, that it's like liberal center right. Fratelli d'Italia, that it's like right. Someone say far right, but let's say right. Liberi Uguali, it's a party that doesn't exist anymore. Più Europa, also it's a part of another coalition, but we will see. You see that the main thing, you have Senate. The other difference that will be this time is that before you had 2 different separation of the electoral corp, because the young people were able to vote only for the House of Representatives. There was a limit of 25 years to vote for the Senate. Now, for the first time in history, from 1948, the youth from 18, they can vote also for the Senate. So something it could change also this one. Normally, like the Senate is more conservative because the voters were older. So this was the difference in the previous election. I show you like the last update. This was July, as I said to you in advance. In Italy, the last polls were about 10 days ago, because it's illegal to show the polls in the last I think 15 days. I don't remember the law, but so you can see that the actual situation is that Fratelli d'Italia, that is Brothers of Italy translated, but it's Fratelli d'Italia, it's with 23%. Democrats Party 23%, Lega 14.6%, Five Star Movement 10.9%, and whatever. But
so those top 2 parties there are both. So the Democrats and the Brothers Party are both some form of center right party, right? With the Democrats.
No. Democrats is center left.
Okay,
so
center left.
The main thing is that you have to catch that the coalition is very important, because if we see, for example, this is the super media, what does it mean? It's like the average of all the polls all together. So it's we can see that we have the 2 main parties that are like too close to call for the winner, let's say, but the winner doesn't mean nothing in this election, because you must win with the coalition. And if you make, let's see, the last polls, you see this is the coalition, so you can understand. Center right, it's about 46.4%. Center left, it's 33.6%. Five-star movement, 10.4%, and the others, it's less than 3. You have to remember that the barrier to enter is about 3% for the single parties. So what does it mean? That in the next parliament, probably we will have 3-4 groups maximum. The only chance to win the election for the center left was to be united to five-star movement. Without it, mathematically impossible. This is why, for example, we are saying that we already know who will win the election, because mathematically it's impossible that the center left will win. The center left will win. We can see in this that it's very interesting. It's difficult to read, but I can explain you easily. The Green Party, it's Lega Nord. Okay. And the light blue is Brothers of Italy. You can see that from the center of the graph, they are like diverging and exchanging the votes. So it's not something that center right got more votes.
Yeah.
The center right, it was like communicant channels between the voters. And let's say that the right votes move from Lega Nord to Brothers of Italy. The game changer was that five-star movement didn't make an agreement with the Democrats Party. So here we have like the last.
That was some incredible growth there. If you could go back to that previous slide there, it looks like the Brothers Party, stole a significant amount of support away from Lega and the five-star movement both, because you see a pretty steep decline.
Five-star movement, I will explain you what is happening, but let's say that the main voters, we will see in the last slide later, the five-star movement was very strong from Lazio to the south. So the southern Italy, because technically it's like the part of Italy with a lower GDP per capita, and five-star movement have like his totem in the citizenship salary. So let's say that the poorest part of Italy got a lot of votes to them. So this is why we don't know the real results of this party, because it could be a surprise on Sunday. So because there was a lot of people with this, let's say, citizenship salary, and Brothers of Italy want to take it out. So it's interesting what could be. If you can see in this graph, Democrats Party have the same votes. About 20%. Why? Because technically it's a party that is popular for pensioner. Pensioner normally votes Democrats Party, and it's about it's center left, but more center and less left. The left party, it's connected to another group that you can see. It's like S6 plus green, but it's very small. So this is the last poll that we can see updated, and it's we can see that Fratelli d'Italia, Brothers of Italy, it's about 25%, Democrats Party 22%, and five-star movement went over Lega Nord, and we have another group that could enter in the parliament, that it's Azione Italia Viva, that was like a party that supported the idea of another great coalition after this election to have Draghi for another mandate. But Draghi already said that he will not accept any type of mandate after this, because it was not his will to do this. It was asked from the President of the Republic. So Okay, Italy exit that you see the last one, it's a party that was also an anti-system. The leader, it's Gianluigi Paragona. They are like collecting a lot of voters from Novax or whatever. So we have about three scenario. Like one, it's about the presence of a center-right coalition. So we can see that in all the three scenario of election, the center-right will win. So this is important to understand. It's pretty impossible that center left will win because they don't have a coalition that permit mathematically to win with this electoral law. Let's say that five-star movement will decrease incredibly the numbers of the seats because it could be maximum 50 seats, and you have to imagine that they had I think over 400 in the last two chambers. So it will be the party with the biggest loss of seats and representative. The scenario B, it's like with the Democrats party that will be a little bit bigger, but the main thing it's if you see the results, it's however the same because you have center right between 240 and 260 seats, center left 7993. So the difference it's too big to be let's say cut from the previous situation. The scenario C, it's like when the center left try to make a common front against the center right with inserting Democrat Party, five-star movement, Green, whatever, everything together against the right. But also in this scenario, if you see, it's against a lose for the left. So there is no scenario where the center left could win this election. Okay. From the previous situation, this is interesting to understand. You see that the yellow was the five-star movement. You see that the center south and Sardinia was completely yellow. So the incognita of this election is who will vote these people, because the north will be let's say a little bit center right everywhere. On the left, you see the uninominals seats because our law it's divided into uninominal votes. You have only one candidate for any coalition. So you see that the blue it's center right. You see that mainly all the uninominals in Italy will be to the center right. The proportional is with a list of a lot of names, and you got the seats for in proportion of the votes of the list. Senate, it's the same. You see, it's mainly center right. Like I made the comparison between like the previous election on the right. Okay, some polls that could be interesting. It's about also the conflict. Why this election is very important for the balance in Europe. First, because Italy it's one of the founding members of the European Union, and it's one of the three biggest members. France, Germany, and Italy are like the side in the European Union, and we can see that. In the polls, it's interesting that Italy and Greece are the two countries with more people that disagree in sending weapons to Ukraine. Mm-hmm. This is interesting because.
Can you go back to that? This one. What is that? Can you translate that line at the top?
This one, it's like who is the main responsible for the war. You can see that, for example, for the Greece, decrease the quantity of people that say Russia, 62%, Italy 74%, but you see that, for example, in the case of Greece, the difference between Russia and US, it's very small. It's 10%.
Yeah.
So in Italy, it's also big because you see that it's at least 40% of the public say that it's like an US fault of the war.
Right.
So it's the two Western countries with, let's say, less.
This is very different. So this is the question: who do you see at fault for starting the war versus there's completely different polling numbers on do you agree with should we send weapons or not? Correct.
Yeah, it's different polls,
Okay.
but like also this one, it's connected, like for example, to the vote to the leaders. You can see that Putin is the last, Zelensky it's the first, but in every country they have a different evaluation, and you see, for example, Italy, Greece, and Austria in the first line. It's the countries with lower votes to Zelensky.
Okay.
So it's interesting. This is why probably in this turn the center right has, let's say, a lot of voters. This is another interesting thing that you can see. For example, in Italy, if you see the difference between Italy and Poland, countries with next to the border with Russia, Poland, 62% of the voters want to make bigger the influence of US with them. In Italy, it's only 18%. So it's
interesting.
About and I'm finishing. If there is any question, like you have to think why this election is important, because 50% of the total sold production of the entire European Union is made in Germany and Italy, and Germany and Italy are, let's say, the biggest clients of Russia about energy. So now Italy decreased its quantity from 40% to 15%, but with a huge cost. And Germany wasn't able to make it so fast because they didn't have LNG ports. Italy, yes. So now we have also other two LNG ships that will be operative in the next 4 months. This is like my city, for example, for you to understand. That it's like the most industrialized province in Europe, Brescia. And last thing, the next government will have, I think, a huge problem, because Italy was considered to be the next gas hub platform for Europe. Before it was Germany with a direct connection with Nord Stream. But if you look at this map, and also yesterday I made a stream with an Israeli guy that the professor Emmanuel Navon from the University of Tel Aviv. Now there is a huge, for example, discovered gas field around Cyprus, huge, between Cyprus and Egypt. So there will be an agreement to use it with LNG. There is another pipe, EastMed, TAP, TransMed, probably like. The new government will have to manage also this energy things. So
But that field hasn't been developed yet, right? Like
no. There is an agreement. The agreement was signed in March. They put, I think, 6.5 billions on the development of the project, but my speaker of yesterday from Israel said to me that the pipeline, that it's about 1,900 kilometers, is too expensive. So he said to me that it's called not pipeline, but dream pipeline. And it said to me that the agreement is for exporting by LNG, so without pipeline. So this is like the actual situation about LNG. We will have another two LNG points, one in Piombino and one in Ravenna, with two LNG ships. Actually, we already have one big in Livorno, another one in in the Adriatic Sea. So this is something that, no, but this election was very interesting for me because it was, let's say, quiet. If we can compare with other election, this electoral campaign was not so fighting people.
That generally means it's not very close. Like if there's not a big fight going on, if one side's is really knocking it out of the park, they're
are
really
fighting.
not
For example, today, like there was a big let's say gaffe from von der Leyen that said we already made some, let's say, action against Poland and Hungary. So if something will happen with this Italian election, we can use our weapons. But it was like a stupid phrase.
What is she trying to advocate for a liberal government in Italy against a conservative one?
I don't know, but for me it was a mistake. She had a mistake to say it, because the problem is that let's say that Italy is the biggest, one of the biggest contributor of the European Union in terms of money, but we receive also the biggest quantity of the money from the Next Generation Europe funds. It's I think 150 billion euro around. It was like the funds for the COVID. They called it Next Generation Europe, but so it's like child game during the election. But I think that this campaign was a little bit more kind, because the results was already not sure, but a little bit clear.
Interesting. So I have some questions for you. If you don't mind, if you can go back to that map that you had that showed what the various parties had voted in 2018, the multicolored map.
I'm returning back, but
the next one, or the one before this.
This one?
Yes, this one. So my question is, and I'm sure probably the audience is wondering this too, but what is so the biggest changes we're going to see in this election is the yellow, the 5-star movement, their amount of support has drastically decreased, and the support for Lega has drastically decreased, and the support for Brothers has drastically increased. So what has been the message what is the morals of the people that voted 5-star? Why do they not like 5-star anymore? And what has been the main message of the Brothers Party that has boosted their support in the last few years?
Okay, let's say that this is the polls at the moment. So we don't know, because there is only polls, and the problem in Italy it's there is a lot of voters that don't say their votes first. Second, it's that a lot of voters change or choose their idea in the last 2-3 days. So this is something that people have to understand. Okay, the votes, the things that is for sure is that Brothers of Italy got about 20% of votes from Lega Nord and Fratelli d'Italia and Forza Italia. So the total amount of the vote of the center right, it's still a little bit the same of 5 years ago. What was the big difference is that 5-star movement got over 30% of the total amount of votes in 2018. So it was a huge amount of votes, and it was concentrated. You have to understand that the population in Italy, it's mainly concentrated in Lombardy, my region, about 20 million. So let's think, so it's 12 million in Lombardy, 12. And you have all around Naples, you have about 4 million inhabitants. So who win, let's say Lazio, Campania, and Lombardy have like, let's say, a good chance to win the election. Or to be in a good position to lead the coalition. If we see in this case, the main question is what will vote the five-star movement voters of 5 years ago, because in the polls of five-star movement votes of 5 years ago, they didn't have a second choice. So it was interesting because a lot of voters of five-star movement didn't vote in the previous election. They had this good way to present themselves as a new party, and so they got voters from not voters people. Second thing, it's
some populist votes is basically what you're suggesting, right? Like just people that were fed up, haven't been voting.
Let's say people that were pissed off about the government, they didn't want to vote, and it was like the hope that this party was different from the others. But when you are in the opposition, it's easy. When you are in the government, not easy. So five-star, the Brothers of Italy, it's important because it was the only party that stayed 5 years in the opposition. So they got from 4% to 23% because it was the only opposition party during the last 3 governments. So this is why they got a lot of increase of the voters.
So what has the brothers' main message been? Like like if you turn on the TV in Italy and you see you see a commercial or a plea to vote for brothers, like why do the brothers want you to vote for them?
Okay, the main let's say the main goals of the center-right coalition, it's like to let's say propose the flat tax. It's like because in Italy the taxation is proportional, and it's interesting because the flat tax it could be good for the rich, but the main
it's flat tax, for the different classes, right? Like
let's say that the biggest voters of the center right, especially of the right parties, it's not rich people. So it says the proportional taxes in Italy, it's like from 0 to 10,000 euro, you don't pay taxes income, and then it's proportional. So it's let's say that it's 75% of taxation for the last part of the money, but nobody declared this amount of salary. So let's say that, for example, for the people who think that in Italy the taxation it's impossible, blah, blah, okay, if you have a company, the real taxation it's about 23% plus 4%. So it's about 27% of the revenue. So
that's pretty typical, honestly, throughout globally. I mean, the U.S. corporate tax rate was somewhere around 30% 10 years ago, I believe, before they started making a bunch of changes. It's much lower than that now. I think it's like
it's similar, but also when I was trying like to open the company, I will open my company in Panama in December. Everybody is thinking, Panama, it's like a tax paradise. The taxation is the same. The corporate tax is the same of Italy. Nothing changed. What changed? It's the taxation on the work. In Italy, it's very high. So if you pay, for example, one salary of 1,000 euro, the real cost for the company is 2,000. So this is because you have a lot, for example, of taxation for the pension, for the security.
In a lot of ways, the government disincentivizes labor. Basically, in economics, like the number one thing is if you don't like something, tax it. So, if you don't want all the people being drunk all day, not doing anything, then you put high taxes on alcohol. If you don't want people to die of cancer and you want people to be healthier to lighten the load on the health system, once they get older, you put high taxes on tobacco and various things like that. So you put taxes on things to disincentivize them. So it's interesting that the government taxes labor so high there.
Let's say that for you to understand, it was such a kind of unwritten agreement after the Second World War, when let's say the trade unions say let's say with the companies can do a little bit of black money, let's say, to understand, and but the workers will be super protected. So for the people that don't understand, the cost of the work in Italy, it's very high. But if you enter in a job, if you are hired, it's impossible to fire you. So if you don't quit, and they want to fire you, imagine that, for example, it's a typical example for you to understand. There was the airport of Milan. They found the workers that they were cheating in the luggage system, and they were like a thief taking the stuff from the luggages. Okay, a lot of values. They have tribunal, blah blah blah, whatever. At the end, the tribunal of work made them to be reintegrated to the working place, also if they were a thief.
Interesting.
So it's because if you want to fire them, however, you have to pay them a lot of month of salary. So this is why the system, it's very complicated. But about, for example, the companies, the taxation, it's similar. The other points that the center right want, it's like less immigration, because the main problem from their point of view is that Italy is one of the main hub from the immigration of Africa. So, for example, Giorgia Meloni, that is the leader of Brother of Italy, said that they want like a naval block, something that probably it's unapplicable, but it's like in the spot. Plus, they are against, for example, gay marriage. They call, for example, gender education. They said, I don't know, we are for the traditional family, and so there is not parents one, parents two, there is mom, dad, whatever. So this is like the typical system. Plus, the problem in the European Union is that Giorgia Meloni and Salvini were a supporter, let's say, friend of Orban in Hungary. So, and Orban has a policy that is a little bit out of the average in Europe. Let's say like this. Plus, Salvini has a position that was every time against the sanction to Russia. He was an admirer of Putin. Berlusconi also is a good friend of Putin. So this is, and you have to think that Italy, it's the only country in Europe that also during the war and whatever, we are still receiving gas from Russia.
Yeah.
And not with the price that is contracted to in Amsterdam. This is something that nobody knows. Italy, Eni, made an agreement directly with Russia more than 20 years ago. The contract is secreted, so it's not public. So the families are suffering for the high prices, but the energy companies are making billions in extra profit.
Mm-hmm.
Because they are buying at the old price, not at the stock price in Amsterdam. So this is like the main points for the center right. But the electoral campaign was very, very, very low profile. Nobody talked about energy. That will be the biggest.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I would think that most people would be a lot of people would be voting based on how they feel about energy. So I have two questions for you, and one shorter question, one a bit of a longer, more complex question. So the shorter question is, and before I ask those, I will say to everyone watching, and if there are any questions in the chat, I will try to answer them in a separate stream. I'm not going to try to take up too much time in this stream. Stefano has somewhere to be here in a little bit. And if there's any questions for Stefano, I'll send them to him, and I'll give you guys the responses later, especially if there's any super chats or anything like that. So my final two questions are, who is likely going to be the next prime minister after the elections? Is it going to be Giorgia Meloni?
Okay, for sure. Let's say the people have to think that in Italy the system is very complicated because the prime minister is selected by the president of the republic. So it officially. So technically, it's presented by the coalition that will win the election, but it has to be approved by the President of the Republic. The President of the Republic now was elected for the second mandate by vote of all the Parliament except Brother of Italy. So this is why it's a complicated situation for me. If there is, but technically the President of the Republic can only accept the let's say the vote from the people. The main thing is that Brothers of Italy and also others member of this coalition already said that they want to modify the constitution to introduce the presidential system instead of the parliamentary. So for the direct election of the president, like in France, like a semi-presidential system, and in that case, someone said of the center right that Mattarella have to resign. The president. So, but this is only like skirmish during the election. So, in my opinion, if the polls are this one, the next prime minister will be the leader of the biggest party of the coalition. That now it's Giorgia Meloni. The interesting thing is that one party that grow so much from 3% to 25% in 4 years, it's huge. Now the difference. They don't have a lot of, let's say, technical people inside the party. So
that tends to happen a lot in some. Honestly, I mean, it's happened in several places around the world. Like even that was a big problem with Donald Trump when he got elected in America. And a lot of people in America don't really understand American politics, but it's very factional within the Democratic and Republican parties. And the issue with Donald Trump's party is he wasn't a traditional Republican. Your traditional Republican before then was either a national security Republican, what you'd call like a math and maps Republican, like someone who's into like balancing the budget or finance or something like that, or your traditional evangelicals. So like all of the experience or the bureaucratic experience in governance was within these branches of the Republican Party. And when Donald Trump moved in, he brought in his primary coalition was one of populists. So like Make America Great Again, like, America First agenda. And there was virtually no experience in bureaucracy and government within so what Trump ended up having to do is he had to pick various different, he had to assign positions to people that came from different parts of the Republican Party at first. And that's why you saw such a huge turnover in Donald Trump's government in terms of his like cabinet secretaries and various appointments and things like that, just because there was no experience, because these people had never ran a country before. And I assume it's probably the same. It's probably going to be the same, like you say, with the Brothers Party. And if I would imagine there were some issues with the Five-Star movement in that area as well.
For you to imagine, it was the same thing in the Five-Star movement, the first mandate, because this one it's the second parliament about with the presence of a Five-Star movement. The first one was in 2013. The other particular thing about Five-Star movement that people have to know is that they cannot be re-elected after 2 mandates. So it's an internal rule. It means that let's say there was the big player of the party cannot be candidate this election. So this is something interesting in faster movement. What will be probably in the next election is that Brothers of Italy will use a lot of technical people outside the party. Probably people from the civil society that could be recognized also, let's say, governative from the outside world. This is why Giorgia Meloni had this problem that was, let's say, marked as neo-fascist, because technically when she was younger, she was in the social movement that was the party that was after, let's say, the Partito Fascista Italiano, but she evolved in a more, let's say, governative party. She made this party because the previous party that was called Alleanza Nazionale, let's say, died. A lot of people pass in other parties, and so she created this party that was with only 2-3%. And for example, Lega Nord, it's more organized. They have a lot of people inside the municipalities. Fratelli d'Italia, no. Forza Italia, it's more like a personal party of Berlusconi, where everybody is decided by him. Democrats Party, it's probably one of the most organized party with like local offices, local committees, whatever. It's still with the organization of the Italian Communist Party. For the people who didn't know, the Italian Communist Party was the biggest communist party in the West. And so it's still with this organization, like a lot of offices, local, also in small cities. I got some question before in the chat about the red spot in the map, the only red spot. These uninominal parts of Italy where will be for sure a center-right, center-left elected, will be some part of Tuscany and Emilia-Romagna. But historically, it's like left voters. But the main difference is that before, all minimum 5-6 regions were all red. So you see that now neither the two more, let's say, lefter regions in the nation are all red, only some parts. So this is the main difference in this election. So
okay, interesting. So my final question is one regarding economy. So referring to the pie chart that you had up that showed 50% of EU production comes from either Germany or Italy. Italy is actually one of the biggest players on the world stage in terms of quality. So what you would say, what you would call value added production. If something comes out of it, one of my favorite quotes actually from one of Peter Zion's books is, if it comes out of Italy, it's either a Fiat or a Ferrari. What you have this issue going on in Italy right now, where just like in the rest of the EU, where you have these increased energy prices, and people, that affects the average person's pocketbook, but it affects mass producers a lot. People that use a lot of energy, so manufacturers, different factories, assembly plants, distribution plants, these various places, it adds a lot of cost to their bottom line. And what you're seeing in Germany right now is it's making German products very uncompetitive on the world stage. So Germany has to compete with China, they have to compete with the US on automobile manufacturing and various other different things. So this is a big problem for Germany. But for Italy, they produce a different kind of product, right? Like they produce cars, but they don't produce Volkswagens. They produce Ferraris. They produce these high value-added products. So, is there any international competitors, or is there any country in the world, or various different corporations that the Italian producers are concerned about? And are they getting priced out in any areas? What's the concern here in terms of rise energy costs for manufacturing?
Okay, let's say to you before that one of the biggest income of Italian GDP is, let's say, industry, but we will talk later about it. Let's say that one of the biggest part of the GDP, that it's about 15-20%, it depends by the year, is tourism. This year it was an explosion of the tourism, so we reached probably the highest level of tourism in Italy before the COVID pandemic. So it was the highest level was in 2019. For this year, we will be much over the 2019 value. So for this thing, I think very good. Today there was like also the forecast for the economy for this year. It was fixed in plus, so it will be. It's very strange because normally Italy it's not in the first countries for increase of the GDP. This year probably it will be in the top 3 or top 5 in the world. For sure, because we had a big losses in 2020 for COVID. So it was so, but the main problem in industry is that actually we produced also Volkswagen, because most of the components of the German cars are produced in Italy. So when you buy an Audi, Volkswagen, Seat or whatever, mostly of the internal parts this is why when I'm talking about Germany and Italy, you have to think that Italy is, for example, specialized in precision mechanics. So small parts that it's like useless by themselves, but it's a part of a complex project. So German, it's like assembling the parts, but they are like buying the small parts from Italy. Because we are the best in, for example, chemicals, mechanicals, whatever. What it's affecting the energy problem? It's affecting the energy for companies. Let's say like foundry, metal foundry has a lot of problems. Italy is a huge producer of metals. We are importing or using scrap parts or metals to produce stainless steel, aluminum, whatever. So these ovens you cannot switch on or off like this, because you need minimum 1 month. So the problem is that a lot of these factories closed because they didn't know the forecast of the energy prices, and the only price that they can compress it's, for example, the material that they are buying. But if the prices, for example, of scrap parts of iron, it's going half price, the seller will not sell, so there is nothing to found.
Yeah.
So this is like a circular problem of this energy thing. The other thing, for example, it's ceramics, but it's very important in Italy, especially in a part that it's called Sassuolo. It's the same parts where it's made Ferrari in Emilia Romagna. All these industries had a lot of problems because they have a huge amount of use of energy. Also, glass production. All these type of industries that are located mainly in the north has a lot of problems. So now the discussion is to make, let's say, not only a price cap, but let's say an artificial price cap. Because if you make a price cap, a seller will not sell to you the gas or whatever at the price that you choose. But if the government will, let's say, decrease the cost of energy using public funds only for this timing, let's say the energy cost will decrease. This is like the strategy that probably will be used in Italy. It's already made in Portugal and Spain. If you check, the people is curious, they already made a price cap on gas and the energy, and the difference of the market price it's paid by the government. So
It's such an interesting concept that I mean, and I'm, like most of my knowledge is actually in the economic area, and I have a lot of historical knowledge as well. And putting the two together, I think sometimes is very important, because historically price caps have always been a disaster for like many different reasons. It's never really worked. And this is, while this is kind of a new effort here to use government funds to artificially, cap. So it's like the government saying the price is lower because they're paying the difference. I mean, the public is still paying the price. Like
I
that
know,
money has to be raised
I know,
eventually.
but
Yeah.
imagine that the price for kilowatt hour, for example, in some cases is 10 times bigger than 2 years ago. So
Right.
people that it's outside cannot understand. It's not possible to produce, or a lot of companies simply will not reopen. So
Right.
it's
No,
so
it's certainly a problem, and I commend any effort to try and fix it. But the only true solution to energy shortages and to lowering these prices is to increase supply. So all efforts, to fix that issue need to be really, and that's my biggest frustration with everything that's going on with Europe and with America and these different places around the world that are struggling with energy. And I understand that currently, the desire to not purchase these things from Russia, but I think it's more just my frustration is a lack of foresight. My frustration is also with the various different green parties, in America and
I
Europe and
know.
these places. The willingness to completely neglect investment in various different natural gas and oil
But
projects for the sake of
the output, Ian, for
planet.
example, in Germany is that they said no coal, no nuclear. They are using coal and nuclear. So it's. I think that in this.
More coal now than they've used in the last 10 years, maybe the last 20 years. And it's
But
not actually coal that they're using. It's a much lower quality. It's called.
Yeah, but imagine that for the people who don't know, like the history of the last 10 years, let's say that it's something funny for the Southern Europe, because the Southern Europe technically will be independent from Russia in the next 1 year and a half, two, with our infrastructure. And technically, these countries were called pigs from Portugal, Italy, Greece, and Spain. So it was a little bit uncomfortable to be called pigs, no? And now, for example, Spain is not importing nothing from Russia. Greece 0% from Russia, because we are both using only LNG. Italy, it's reconverting its infrastructure to LNG and to pipes to Northern Africa and Azerbaijan. Right. So the biggest problem of this game, it's Germany, because if you look to the geography, Germany it could be connected only or to UK or Norway, or we will have to supply Germany from Southern Europe.
Right.
Or there is another scenario that I hope that will be this, because everybody is afraid about nuclear disaster. Now we will die, blah, blah, blah. But I'm still hoping that this increasing of escalation could be also, let's say, something that could push to a deal. And for sure, Russia, in my opinion, can be still a supplier of Europe after the war. For sure, with not all the amount of gas that was delivered before, but partially, I think yes. Because when all the people have to know that, for example, Nord Stream 2 was magically shut down before 24th of February. Everybody can check it. So actually, it's not sanctioned. Mm-hmm. So if the war will finish and we want to start a new relationship with Russian Federation, they can switch on Nord Stream 2 in 2 seconds if they want.
Right. Yeah.
So
absolutely.
let's see.
So to go back to what the last point I was making about German coal, it's not actually coal. Well, it's what you would consider brown coal, or the proper name for it is lignite, and it has a much higher carbon content than most.
Lignita.
It's very, very dirty compared to coal. But I think we're going to wrap it up here. Thanks for everyone that has been participating. Thank you, Stefano, for the presentation. I actually know way more about Italian politics and elections than I did going into it. Make sure you go and follow Stefano's channel. It is Mazarin Geopolitics, correct? I can post after we're done with this. I'll post the link to his channel in the description here, so you can come back to this video and find the link to his channel in the description. So thanks for everyone that stayed with us and that's going to watch this later. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.
Bye bye. Okay.